Also, some interesting leaks are coming out with the end of UFC's ESPN contract coming up and a possible Netflix move, that the UFC have been mad at ESPN for declining pay-per-view sales and they may be moving to Netflix now. As you may know, the UFC moved from Fox Sports to ESPN in 2019, which ESPN services its biggest and highest paying fan base. A lot of fans have been complaining about wavering interest and not feeling hyped for cards like they used to in years prior, so it's funny the UFC brass are also feeling that and affecting their bottom line, which affecting their money is the only way for things to change. Has the move to ESPN Plus hurt the UFC, and can Netflix bring it back? On the trail it was in 2019 when it seemed to have unlimited growth potential and hardcore fans who tune into every event. So the decline in pay-per-view sales with ESPN. Now the real money comes from the US, right? They pay $80 per card, the rest of the world maybe pays the subscription, and here in the UK we pay £25 only on a big card, a McGregor card or something, but that's rare. The weird thing with ESPN Plus is you have to pay a subscription, $10.99 a month, then you have to buy a pay-per-view for $80, which is just about almost £62. So there's two paywalls. You can see why a casual fan might go, hey, I just want to watch the pay-per-view. Why am I paying pretty much $91 now? Also, it happens with subscription services where you forget to cancel, or with DAZN for example, they make it so it's very hard to cancel, then you get the charge next month. These are the little barriers that the ESPN move is putting up. All while, pay-per-view prices have been steadily increasing. I say $80, it wasn't always that. They've been sneakily raising the price. It's been raising about $5 every year. So you put it together, if you buy the bundle, you're spending €100 on ESPN Plus and a pay-per-view a month, you spend almost $1,000 a year. Have they been pricing out their fans, the fans that pay the most, while other countries are paying subscription fees for much cheaper? And then when we talk about declining interest, why it may not all be ESPN's fault, you see ESPN pays UFC $500,000 worth of pay-per-views, buys each card. So the thought is the UFC will sell enough pay-per-views over time to make that make sense. But the UFC instantly started cutting costs since they didn't rely on pay-per-views any longer. Since ESPN is paying that, you felt this austerity instantly, by the way. All the way back then, I'd literally be scrolling on cards pre-ESPN and they were stacked. But now these cards look stacked compared to now because we have 6 years of austerity. Like when Shane Burgos was cut, usually that's a guy they keep around. He puts on wars, but the UFC saw his contract was high and cut him. Francisco Trinaldo lost one fight and was cut. He was an older guy, but he had knockout power and went for it. So we end up having entire cards outside the main event where you don't know who they are because they're all low contract guys. And I'm a hardcore with an MMA YouTube channel. Imagine being a more casual fan who catches the highlights and the news but tunes in for the big cards. There's no incentive anymore. We used to have legends on the cards, the veterans, the guys who put on wars who all demanded a higher contract. Now we have guys on 12 and 12 who nobody knows. We all know they will be gone within a year or two. So why waste time memorising them all? 900 guys under contract or something. We've just seen huge fan fatigue now, more than ever. And we've been losing the stars. Khabib is gone, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor isn't fighting, Nate Diaz, George Masvidal, even Israel Adesanya is aging on. We've lost so many of them, 1 million pay-per-view guys, that I think ESPN is losing money like hell. When they first came in, they saw all these big stars and a growing sport. I think behind the scenes they're angry. Because what have we seen? McGregor angry he couldn't get a fight for ages. Nate Diaz angry he couldn't get a fight. UFC puts their stars on ice to save money. There's a lot of things there. Let's look at Netflix though. Everyone has a Netflix account. So it's not an extra subscription for a lot of people. Huge global reach that can reach new fans. We saw with Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, it hit insane numbers. WWE is even on there now. The fight nights may get insane viewership numbers, but we wonder how the pay-per-view will affect everything. I'd honestly prefer that there was a UFC pay-per-view subscription. I think that's the best for viewership and bringing the fans back. But for the UFC to get motivated again, I really hope Netflix doesn't do the same thing as ESPN, where they pay them the same rate for pay-per-views. They need incentive. We need a hungry UFC back. A lot of fans won't remember the times when the UFC wasn't sleeping in silk sheets. That's what we need. Anyway, these are my thoughts. Now I ask you, how do you think this move to Netflix goes? I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'm out.